Like, even though there's like a common goal, there's different ways of getting to the goal and different sub-goals and interests based on which discipline you're from.
Also individual values.
Yeah,
somebody is really keen on knowing that saying that climate change is our biggest challenge. Another may say food for the people is a bigger challenge, and then you may kind of want a different focus on the fisheries issue. Any suggestions and challenges?
Like what we talked about, the translation problems, for example, that could lead to misunderstandings and conflicts.
Yeah, very much so. And even if you think you have a common understanding of a concept like sustainability, how do you translate sustainability to your mother tongue? Come on, what do you say what is sustainability in your mother tongue?
Kestävä kehitys.
Kestävä. Did you see?
Kestävyys.
She said kestävyys, but then she added a word to make sure that I understand. She said kestävä kehitys. It means sustainable development. And there is a difference between sustainability and sustainable development. And
which one is it then? Kestävyys.
The question is there, but it because if you talk about development, you easily put some money on it, or you have an idea of growth.
Yeah, right.
So Norway talk about green transition, and everybody is supposed to make money out of it. Okay, then you talk about sustainable development, or you may perceive the word very differently. And the challenge is then, of course, that we have many of these words, and if each of us have a slightly different understanding of the word, especially in the international context where we have different languages, but also cultural understanding of what the word is like. So kind of putting up these words in any project where you go, are we talking about sustainability or are we talking about sustainable development? And why do I perceive the word differently? Because if you get, it depends on, it's very much also kind of connected to your political kind of values. So, yeah. Any suggestions over there?
We talked a bit about how some disciplines or people working in some discipline have a sort of belief that their discipline is the most important, and the others are minor.
It's safe. It's safe. It feels important, but that's what you know. So that's again this open-mindedness. Be open. Try to listen, and even read it if you don't understand everything. You had a good challenge in the transdisciplinary research.
Different knowledge background and using different different background knowledge and also language. Kind of like, even though it's the same language, but maybe the definitions aren't. But I think Miriam, you mentioned that maybe too. Yeah.
But also when we provide, very often we provide questionnaires, and that language may not only be difficult for your scientific colleagues, but also for the stakeholders. So kind of quality control, the language that it's understandable, and then when it's translated, you totally lose control because it might be in Chinese or a language that you don't know. So then you're slightly lost to do the quality control. And you might not be the right person to check that the text is understandable. I just wanted to say a typical example also of a societal challenge that we had was when we, during the millennium, who watched the videos under section 1? The videos with how the sustainable development goals were developed and so on. There was the Millennium Development Goals, remember? And they were very linear in development. So the challenge there was they were not able to bring people on board because it didn't feel relevant. Then they brought them back and say, to bring everybody on board, we need to actually multiply them from 8 goals to 17 goals. And it was much more a participatory and a transdisciplinary process in bringing in all the different aspects of sustainable development. So we got the sustainable development goals. Okay, now we already mentioned common language. Cultural dimensions. This is really, really, really hard. And I have made several mistakes. because I'm a Finn who escaped to northern Norway, where I'm allowed to say what I think at any time without anybody getting hurt. At least usually not getting hurt. But getting into a Mediterranean context, I have several times been too direct, and my Icelandic friend comes and say, a professor, she knocks on me and says, Michaela, you did it again. Because I was too direct, and some people might feel hurt because I say, we can't just wait for the models, we need them now, or, I may speak up too loudly. So I suggest that you go online and do the cultural dimension test and compare it with each other during lunch towards the end of the this Hofstede's test is easily available there. I will spend 4 minutes more, so bear with me. The project structure is key, and do develop it up front and make the meeting points clear to the people, because you need your stakeholders when your model is ready, or also you need to involve the right stakeholders there. So the availability of stakeholders is really a key issue, and if there are many projects working on climate adaptation in fisheries, for instance, they may be overrun by 7 or 8 projects. In Norway, we try to have a common kind of calendar where we put up these meetings and try to run them back to back or even jointly, because else the fisheries directorate, the one guy who was sent on these meetings, wouldn't be available for us. So this really ensuring that you bring them in at the right time and respect their time and availability. And then there are several ethical concerns that might not be as clear, that might be challenging in a transdisciplinary setting, and there are several of them. So I'm not talking now. This is in chapter 3 in the Rutgers handbook, and we talk about procedural ethics. That is where you have, in Norway, we have a research ethics law of 2017. You need to know about it. If you do a PhD course, the only mandatory PhD course is run always in January at UIT. You learn about this. If you're a master student, you need to discuss this with your supervisor to ensure that you have the ethics right. But there are official processes to get the ethical clearances, and they are both on national or regional. If you're a medical student, it's on regional level, and also the institution has put ethical acceptance in place, because we see that more and more journals are asking you to actually provide that your research concept has been accepted prior to you starting the project. In social sciences, we are used to it because there we have to apply to previously NSD. Now it's called SICT in Norway, where you can go on their homepage and tick off what you want to do, and they tell you if you need to have this clearance. The point is you need this before you collect the data, and it's now requested also by the funding body. So if you go to the EU portal, they ask you to provide you with the ethical concerns and the clearance, and it's in the portal. So if you didn't fill in today before the deadline, you may get an issue. So these are all things you need to take, and the ethical clearance may take time, and especially in these multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary projects where several committees might be involved. It depends a little bit which university you are at and which country you are in. And then there are issues with the informed consent and who is owning the data, who is owning the idea, who has right to the intellectual property. And when you do this co-production of knowledge, you may not be in the position to foresee what is coming up. Some of the outcomes are very clear, but in a discussion or in a meeting, you will come up with other new ideas. So there's a lot of responsibility on the researcher, and you have the moral considerations to take, and you need to reflect on the ethics from the very end of when you plan the project to the very end, ensuring, for instance, that you disseminate and involve your stakeholders to provide them with the knowledge where you use their expertise. And then it's about the respect for the participants. This is kind of the rigor, to be a kind of honest, show integrity, be objective, and as you read these papers, objectivity is an issue as soon as you are in a close interaction with your stakeholders, because then you are part of the research and not necessarily only the observer. And that again brings some new challenges to us. And then also whom to bring in. Don't only bring the ones that you know, but how do you ensure representativeness, and also the imbalances in these groups. I was once in Ancona. We were discussing the fisheries of the Adriatic Sea. And we had all the fishermen around, and we had them in a really nice group, getting a lot of information on the minimum size of hake. That is a big issue because the stock is not reproducing. And suddenly a guy with white hair walked in, and he took the whole stage. Nobody spoke a word anymore. So to get the others, I learned later that they all owed him money because he was the one having the biggest Rapido trawler. So he was rich, and he had supported their investments. So what do you do in such a situation? We brought the most, let's say, accessible lady who spoke Italian into a separate room and said we would like to have a private conversation with him because he had so much knowledge, as he had, of course. But by doing that, and we really needed to do it immediately, and it's kind of, what do we do with this now? So thinking about ethics gets a little bit hard because you're just, how do we say this meeting? And we found this solution. I think it was okay, but it was a way to allow the younger fishermen to actually continue to discuss in the meeting. Okay, so reflect and react on both individually. They even advise you to write like a journal to have some reflection, but also use the peer group. Or if you're in a bigger project, use the project management board or the key people in the project to reflect on these things. And then you have the challenge now that we in complex systems, we have a lot of data. We may combine data sets, and by doing so, we may suddenly end up with having rather specific information about single individuals, despite not knowing of it. So be aware of that. For instance, saying we combine the address list of Norway and the health data, and suddenly it says Finnish professor at UAT who was in Soviet Union and lives on Kvalia. Everybody knows it's me, you know? So because you combine different data sets, there are suddenly information, even if my personal code is not available or my name is not available, everybody will know it's me. Yes, and then I just wanted to see, the impact that we get through this transdisciplinary project. That is one of my main drivers to see that this is an opportunity to change the world. What is impact? Yes, please.
Change.
Yeah. Now it's this. I in my picture, this is the knowledge or the decision support tool or the thing that we are developing, and we give it out to the community, and we hope that it has a lot of impact, so that the knowledge is transferred into the decision making and into the system. That's my kind of picture of it. So that's why I like this picture. Sometimes you see like pendulas, and if one pendulum kicks the one, or the next goes, the next goes, the next goes. That's also a visual understanding of what the impact is. But if you talk about projects, this is my last slide because I love it, and it was developed actually by Petter Olsen at Nofima. So this is now we think this is our project of transitive loops here, and it goes there and it ends here. And here are a number of people involved. So, so within this square, this is the project. when it's running with the participants, including our key stakeholders, the ones that get money from us. Okay, and then the project impact on the rest of the world. So this is impact, despite the project is still running, we have impact on policymakers or others. And then after project end, we have also impact on what the next project is going to be about, or how the science is going to develop, or hopefully that they brought the good interactive approaches that we developed in our project. So this is how, because what we are doing in the project with ourselves, it's not impact. And that's where many people, when they start writing proposals, the EU or even the Research Council now, goes wrong. Because you talk about, we are going to meet our stakeholders, or we are going to have a meeting or a conference. Okay, if it's a big conference and you go out there and invite people outside, then it's impact. Else, not so much. Okay, there are a few other slides. We don't have time for that. That was the social science paper that I didn't give a lot of priority. I'm very sorry for that, but you can go ahead and look at it. And thank you for your attention. I'm available for a couple of minutes for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Could impact also be like influence
Yes,
or
you could say,
contribution?
yeah, impact is very much, very specific. So if you have influence and can measure it, then it's impact.
Okay.
Yeah. But impact, we usually talk about impact generators or key exploitable outcomes. And these then we specify how we measure the impact of these. So then we would need an impact indicator. So it's, for instance, if you say, we are going to be out there for the world, it's how many people visited our social media activity, how many teachers brought our tools into their teaching program, or how many companies developed climate adaptation plans using our guide. So very often we should actually measure it.
And on sustainability, my mother tongue, I don't know.
Now that's good homework to have, because it's very often dependent on your on how that is described in your own country.